have what we call our spirituality recovery group, but I just wanted to say a word about that because we've had a lot of new people over the summer, and oftentimes you might wonder what's the best way to connect into a church. Our Sunday night spirituality recovery group is a great way to connect into our church. It's really a broad cross-section of our church, and we get together and we actually discuss the Sunday morning theme and get into groups and talk about it and apply it to our daily lives. So we'd love to see you back tonight at 6:30. Great time to start. So there's lots going on this fall here at Lighthouse. You have a bulletin. And one of the dynamics when you've worked in a church for a long time, you know that everybody wants their announcement announced at this time of year. And we don't have time to kind of go through it. So I'm encouraging you to read it carefully. Many things starting up this fall. I am going to highlight a couple of quick things. First of all, lots of you know we're starting a new series today on God's opened and closed doors. I was inspired by a book I read in the last year, and some of those books, are there still books on the stool? So there's still a few books available. You can just take one if you will read it. If you want to pay for it, they're $10. What I really wanted you to know is that there are 3 opportunities for book groups and discussions that are going to be starting tomorrow, one of them. So please read your bulletin and you just come. If you're interested in that, you just come. Also, our Wednesday night activities start up this week. That includes our youth ministry. It includes Sunshine will be continuing. And also Alpha. And I wanted to just say a word about Alpha because we have a lot of people in this church who would benefit by going to Alpha. And so I just want to encourage you to think about that. If you are fairly new to church or returning, maybe you're here for, kind of wanting to explore, Alpha is just the best course I've ever seen about teaching the basics of our faith. And that begins this Wednesday. There's information there as well. And then there are a couple of women's activities this week, a women's dinner as well as a women's retreat this week. And so you need to read those announcements, ladies, and you may want to participate. All right. So 4 years and a few months ago, I found myself unemployed for the first time in my life. I had worked in a church since I was 18 years old, and 4 years ago, at the ripe old age of 32, I found myself at a crossroads, uncertain about what I should do next. I had been asked to resign as senior pastor of my former church. The ministry over years had taken a toll on me emotionally, spiritually, and psychologically. Truthfully, I had not taken care of myself properly, and burnout, which had grown like a slow-growing cancer, had rendered me depressed, and it was difficult for me to function. My progression of alcoholism had grown out of control, and I found myself powerless over pretty much everything in life. And to sum it up in recovery language that some of you will understand, my life had become unmanageable. Now, at that time, it seemed as if nearly every door in my life had been slammed shut. Except one, my family was still with me. But I was certain that I was done with the ministry, and so I began to wonder, what should I do? Having experienced some healing and having somehow found a few months of sobriety, I had a sense that God was not done with me yet. I had always been a person who would be willing to stretch a little bit and to step out in faith. We're going to talk about that next week, by the way. And so in August of 2013, I sensed that I was standing before a door. It was cracked open just a little bit. I wished it had been wide open with a set of instructions in case I was to go through it, but that was not the case. What was on the other side was very uncertain. And I would find that it would have some stumbles and falls. Life is kind of like that, you know. But on the other side was also an adventure beyond my wildest imaginations. And there were people on the other side of the door, good people. People with some rough edges, and people who were messed up even more than I was. On the other side of the door were people who were also standing before a door. You see, they were standing before their own door that was cracked open a little bit. And on the other side we would meet, and they would become my friends. And they would become my brothers and sisters in Christ. And together we would join together on a wild adventure that only God could have imagined. 4 years ago, I walked through that door, and I'm forever grateful that I did. Happy birthday, Lighthouse Church. So we have a question today. If you are new, we ask a question every week, and it kind of blends the new theme and series that we're going to look at this fall and our birthday. And so you have an opportunity to talk a little bit about your time here. How has Lighthouse served as a door opened by God for you to find love, encouragement, hope, or recovery? And if you have not been here before, these guys will bring a microphone around, and you just need to stand up after you get their attention, speak directly into the mic, and give us a brief answer, because I suspect we may have a few people who want to share today. So here it is. How has Lighthouse served as a door opened by God for you to find love, encouragement, hope, or recovery?
Hello, my name is Keith, and after 4 years and 7 months of recovery from alcoholism, I had relapsed, and it got to the point where I had to go into the hospital, and Dale was there. He came, and he did not only comfort me, he comforted my wife, and he constantly texted me and let me know that I was not alone in this, you know, and members of the congregation was there to comfort my wife during it all too, so thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Keith. Proud of you.
My name is Aurora. Happy birthday, and thanks for this church. I think hope was hard for me. I was in a lot of different churches, and I was condemned a lot, and so for me, that condemnation was not here, and the judgment was not here, so that gave me hope to find God. And my walk of path, it's just been amazing, so thanks. You are a family, and I appreciate everything you guys have done for me.
Thank you, Aurora.
My name is Rachel, and Lighthouse has not only been a door open for me, but Dale himself has been a part of my recovery. But when I came to Lighthouse, I found that I didn't have to put on a mask anymore when I came to church. And I could talk to people that were just like me. And it's just so happy to walk through these doors and know that I'm accepted and that I can have a conversation with anybody. We understand each other, and we're all the same person.
Thanks, Rachel.
I'm Tim, and I'm forever grateful for this place because right here is where I attended my first NA and Celebrate Recovery meetings, and it's changed my life, so I'm really grateful for this place.
Good job, Tim. Flint? Oh, okay, I think he's got it.
Hi, I'm Sharon, and about 4 years ago I lost my husband. I was very, very ill, I was headed to a church that I was receiving nothing from. So I saw the article in the paper about Dale, and I'd known Dale from before, and being at the Shields. So at that point, I had to use a walker everywhere I went. So I grabbed my walker, trudged through the snow, got up the steps, got all the way around the inside until I found the bar where they were at.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I thought they're not in a bar, but oh yes, they were. So walked in, and I have not missed a Sunday since. This is my family.
Morning, my name is Samantha. I think it was 3-4 months ago, my sponsor invited me to come to church here at Lighthouse, and I was in a pretty fragile state. And the first time that I came here, I don't know how else to describe it other than I finally felt like I was at home. It's just such a nice feeling to walk in and just like Dale says every morning, to just know that you can come as you are. There's no judgment, and there's all different kinds of people here with different stories and backgrounds. And I just thoroughly look forward to every Sunday and being here and seeing everybody.
Thanks, Samantha.
My name is Jeremy. Not only has the Lighthouse served as a door opened by God for the things listed, but it was a door opened by God for me to find God. Here is where I was able to explore my faith and be open about what I believe without judgment. And thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Hi everyone, I'm Scott. I'm an addict alcoholic.
Hey.
I love this church because there is no judgment when I walk through these doors. And that means a lot to me because I've been in other churches most of my life that they don't like people like me there. So I'm grateful that I can come to this church when I have the opportunity to. But I'm going to be 44 years old tomorrow, and there's a good chance I'm going to celebrate recovery sober for the first time in 30 years.
Woo!
Hi, I'm Stephanie. As most of you know, I actually did find love here at Lighthouse. I did find my husband. My grandmother was right. You do find a man of God in a church of God. But one thing that I have found is that for my recovery, because I'm a recovering alcoholic, he has helped me stay sober or be sober and not be that person that helps me get drunk anymore. So I am thankful for my husband.
All right. Last chance. All right, you guys, thank you for running the mics. And for those who don't know, we do discuss that on Sunday nights at 6:30, so you're welcome to come and participate this evening. Well, most of you know, in fact, Sharon just said it, that Lighthouse started at Shields Arena in their bar. That's true. And our first Sunday, we actually had 88 people there, which blew me away at the time. We didn't usually have 88 people that first year. In fact, we probably averaged 50-ish or in the 50s, but we had a lot of curiosity seekers, I think, that first week. And one of the things I thought would be a little bit fun to do would be to show you how a church evolves and grows and transitions in a couple of years. So I want you to think about for a second when you came to Lighthouse, because I'm going to have you stand up according to the days that, or the times that you came, or the years that you came. So if you were there, is there anybody in this service who was there on the first Sunday? Stand up. Okay, the Wenstra, yeah, my daughter and husband and Lion. All right. So a few of the Ashmores, Ann. So they were there the first Sunday. Now, stay standing. If you came during that first fall of 2013 sometime, please stand up. Okay, so there were a few more. See how it kind of grows. Now, some of you came, you can sit down. Some of you came during 2014. In the middle of that year is when we found this building. I just want to say how blessed we were by this building. We don't own this building at this time. We have a supporter who doesn't really worship here, who bought the building. He's letting us use it. You maybe noticed he's painting it right now. Well, he's not personally, but it's being painted. And so that's kind of an open door that God gave us. So if you came during the year 2014, stand up. Okay, just a few of you. Yeah. If you came during the year, you can sit down. 2015, stand up. Okay, so quite a few more started during our first full year here at Lighthouse in this location. You can be seated. 2016, stand up. You can be seated. And if you came 2017, maybe today's your first day, stand up. So, see? All right, you can be seated. That's always fun to do. So like most adventures in life, it starts with an open door and our decision to walk through it. I find as a pastor that I'm often in conversations with people about doors. Like, how do I know which door to walk through? How do I know God's direction for my life? How do I know which career I'm supposed to pursue or which school that I should go to? How do I know which church that I should attend? Is there a person behind a door for me to marry or to make my life with? I have that conversation quite often around this place. Here at the Lighthouse, we also have other doors that people courageously walk through or sometimes ask, like which door is the door to a new life or a better life? Which door might be the door to a sober life or a clean life? Or which door might be a door to some recovery for my mental illness or my depression? Which door might I walk through and find some good friends or some true friends? Some of you have maybe experienced that. So we all use the image of an open and closed door in our lives, and we wonder, how does God interact with our daily lives? I think that's so common. We all hear that God has a plan for our life, right? So if God has a plan for my life, is it a particular door that I'm supposed to walk through? Why if God has a plan for my life, why doesn't he make it more clear? How do I know which door? I have found, I don't know if this is true for you, but I have found that the doors in my life are not always clearly marked. Am I the only one who's experienced that? And what if I pick the wrong door? Then what? One of the things that I want to dispel from the beginning, and we'll talk about these next weeks as well, is that somehow we get this impression, especially if you grew up in the faith, you get this impression that God has this specific plan for your life, and yet when we look at our lives, we see all these doors. And we start to think, you know what, there's only one right door. What if I walk through the wrong one? Is that going to ruin my life? Huh? If I pick the wrong door, am I a goner and I'll miss God's plan for my life? I want to dispel that that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about God's open and closed doors. But it's true and it's very clear that we wonder all the time, which door? Which door are we supposed to walk through? When we see doors in our life, which door? Turn and ask somebody, which door? Well, I want you to turn back and say, just listen, he's going to tell you. Okay, I want to be clear about something. No, I'm not. I'm not going to tell you which door. Here, that's the key. You know, and here's the first lesson that I want to share with you this morning, that we all have multiple doors in our life that we could go through. And oftentimes, God says, you pick. God says, you pick. And it's a serious mistake to assume that God kind of has one door in the midst of many for you to walk through. So we'll unpack that today and in the coming weeks. Last year I read a book by John Ortberg, and for years John Ortberg has been my favorite author. And his writings and his teachings, they have had a huge influence on me. Often he is able to put life and faith experiences into a language that has been helpful to me personally as I've sought to live my life in faith. And often he articulates concepts and principles that I deal with in ministry in ways that might help me serve you. And that was certainly the case in this book that I read this last year. And so over these next weeks, we're going to talk a little bit about doors. Hence the decorations. Melissa Nelson, by the way. Nice job, huh? And we're going to talk about how God opens doors and how God closes doors. But largely what I want to do is I want to share with you some of the things that I've come to know as true in my own life and what I see as relating to you in your own life. But I also want to share a little bit of this book. And so we do have some of these books available still, I think. And if you'd like one and you can't afford to pay it, please take it. If you want to pay for it, they're $10. And there are some groups for discussion. So today, I just want to say we're just getting started, all right? So what have we missed this morning so far? A joke. Thank you. All right. So you might have heard this one before. A hip young man goes out and buys a 2001 Ferrari 360 Spider. It is the best convertible sports car, costing around $250,000. He takes it out for a spin, and while stopping for a red light, an old man on a moped, wearing an open-face crash helmet, looks about 70-ish maybe, he pulls up next to him. The old man looks over at the sleek, shiny red surface of the car and he says, "What kind of car you got there, sonny?" The young man replies, "A 2001 Ferrari 360 Spider. They cost $250,000. "That's a lot of money," said the old man. Why does it cost so much?" He says, "Because this car can do over 200 miles per hour. "That's pretty cool," the old guy said. And he says, "Can I look inside?" And the young man says, "Sure." So he leans off of his moped and he kind of scouts out through the car window what all it looks like inside. And so just then the light changes green and the guy decides to show the old man what his car can do. So he floors it, and within 30 seconds, his speedometer is up to 200 miles per hour. And he's cruising along, and suddenly he notices in this rear view mirror this tiny dot coming. And it's getting closer and closer. And then all of a sudden, this dot flies right by him, whoosh, and goes out ahead of him. And he wonders, what in the world can be faster than my car? And then he notices the dot is way up ahead of him, but it's starting to come back closer and closer and closer. And it comes by and whoosh, right by him again. And he looks, and it's the old man on the moped. He thunders, "What in the world is going on?" And he looks in his rearview mirror. The moped is getting closer and closer again. This time, instead of going by him, it crashes into the rear end of his car. And the old man, or the young man, pulls over and he gets out of his car and he runs back, and sure enough, it's the old man on the moped. And he wonders, how could his moped go so fast? And he says, I'm so sorry. Is there anything that I can do for you?" And he says, "Yes, please unhook my suspenders from your side view mirror." Takes a while to get there, but it's a pretty good joke. The story of life is life interrupted. We spend time planning and preparing And yet life has a way of interrupting our plans. Have you ever noticed that? Some of you here today are cruising at 200 miles per hour. Some of you here today were cruising at 200 miles per hour and you crashed. That's my story. I'll never forget, I had a guy in my former church when my life was falling apart tell me, you know, God always has a way of getting our attention. Sometimes it's with a metaphor, sometimes it's with a 2x4. And some of us know that to be true. God sometimes can use a 2x4 in our life. So there's a mystery to how God works and interacts with our daily lives. And so when we talk about how God has plans for us and how God has open doors and closed doors, one of the things that I want to share with you this morning is that we need to understand a little bit of the mystery of how God works in our lives. And so I have a quote for you. Mary, if you don't mind putting it up on the screen. Here it is. We are neither pawns in the hand of God nor the authors of our own destiny. Did you hear that? Why don't you read it with me? We are neither pawns in the hand of God nor authors of our own destiny. I think it's such a brilliant statement because it says that you know, we don't have a God who just kind of moves us around like puppets. I think we know that to be true. And yet there seems to be this higher power and oftentimes this higher purpose that we can discover in our life and experience, you know, God's hand in opening doors and seeing us through them. I'd like you to grab a Bible. There should be some around you if you didn't bring one, and turn to Revelation chapter 3. In our church Bibles, it's page 1043. 1043, and if you are using a recovery Bible, it's 1651. 1043 or 1651. And most of you know that the book of Revelation is a series of visions that is given to the Apostle John. And in this book, John writes these visions to 7 specific churches, each church with its own set of circumstances. In this particular vision, he's writing to the church in Philadelphia, not Pennsylvania, but church back in Asia Minor at the time. So let me read beginning at verse 7. Write this letter to the angel of the church in Philadelphia. This is the message from the one who is holy and true, the one who has the key of David. What he opens, no one can close. And what he closes, no one can open. I know all the things you do, and I have opened a door for you that no one can close. One of the things that we want to learn is that when God opens a door for us, there's nobody else in our life who can really close it. It's important, though, to understand what it was that John was addressing in the church of Philadelphia at that time. You see, this church, if you kept reading, you would learn, this church had been facing great difficulty. They had been facing persecution for their faith, and yet they had remained faithful. Did you hear that? They had been able to remain faithful even in the face of persecution. And what John is saying is that God has opened a door for you, a door to walk through with Him. A door that in the circumstances that you are going through, this door leads to the ability and the power to not walk through the circumstances that you're going through alone, but to walk with God. That's what John is saying. That God has opened a door for you to move forward even though you want to give up. Did anybody hear me? God has opened a door for you to walk through and move forward even if you don't want to. That what God provides you is a key to life, that God will hold your hand as you move forward. Often God's open doors don't provide a relief in the circumstances that we're going through. What they provide is growth in trust and character formation. In his book, John Ortberg writes a little bit about Viktor Frankl. Some of you have maybe read a little bit of Viktor Frankl's works. Let me share something that he writes. Viktor Frankl was a brilliant doctor whom the Nazis imprisoned in a concentration camp. They took away his livelihood, confiscated his possessions, mocked his dignity, and killed his family. They locked him in a cell with no way out. A room without an open door is a prison. But he found a door that his guards did not know about. Here's a quote from Viktor Frankl. It'll be on the screen. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Isn't that brilliant? That's from somebody who spent years in a Nazi prison camp. Frankl discovered that doors are not just physical. A door is a choice. He found that when his circumstances had closed every outer door to him, they revealed to him the door that mattered far more. The door through which a soul can leave fear and enter into courage, leave hatred and enter into forgiveness, leave ignorance and enter into learning. He discovered that his guards were actually far more imprisoned by cruelty and ignorance and foolish obedience to barbarism than he was imprisoned by the walls or barbed wire. Some people learn this and become free, and some never see it and live as prisoners, but there's always a door. It's the first lesson we want to learn today. So here's the main point that I want you to take home with you today. And I want you to understand this because you can't move on if you don't get it. If we don't get this, we're going to struggle with this concept of God's opened and closed doors the rest of our lives. We will miss out on an adventure that God has for us. And so here it is. It's going to be on the screen before you. God's primary will for your life is the person you become. See, God's primary will for your life is not the circumstances you're walking towards. Doesn't mean He doesn't care, but God's primary purpose for your life is the person that you are becoming. In James chapter 1, verse 5, James suggests that we ask God for wisdom. That one of the things that we should do as followers of Jesus is that we ask God for the ability to discern and to decide things for ourselves. You see, that's God's will for our lives. That we be growing and that we be maturing and that we grow in this ability to make decisions for our own well-being. God's primary will for your life is the person that you are going to become and the person that you are becoming. And so the doors that God puts before us are often doors that we can decide whether or not we're going to grow and trust as we move forward in our life. Now, I want to share a little bit again from John Ortberg. He writes, God's primary will for your life is not the achievements you accrue, it's the person you become. God's primary will for your life is not what job you ought to take. It's not primarily institutional or circumstantial. It's not mainly the city where you live or whether you get married or what house you ought to be in. God's primary will for your life is that you become a magnificent person in His image. Somebody with the character of Jesus. That is God's main will for your life. And no circumstances can prevent that. Did you hear that? So I don't care what you were through this week. I don't care if you've been struggling with addiction and you're still detoxing or coming off of it right now. I don't care if, well, I do care, but I don't, ultimately it doesn't matter if you are struggling with mental illness or you have just gotten out of the hospital because you've been trying to harm yourself. Ultimately, it may not matter whether you've been incarcerated and you're just now ready and afraid to enter society again, which some of you are. What matters is that you walk through a door of trust in God, that no matter what the circumstances of your life, that you can walk with God and that you can become a character based upon life with Jesus Christ. God cares more about the person that you're going to become than what you did yesterday. Anybody want to say amen? Amen? God cares about the person that you are going to become. Now, it's been interesting this summer. I just want to kind of do it a little aside. As some of you know, our church has been growing really rapidly, and we've, due to the growth, decided to add a new ministry position or a pastoral position to our church. And we've had lots of good applicants, and it's been fun for me to watch who's been applying because we've not had anybody apply who's currently serving in a ministry position in a church. But we've had quite a number of people who have applied who you see that God has been doing something in their life significant. And that they have been growing and are sensing a call to serve somehow. The ones that have been really interesting for me are some of you who have asked me about the job, but you didn't apply. And there's quite a few of you here. And my guess is that what's been going on in your life is that God has been doing something good, right? And that is so awesome to see. And maybe the timing isn't right, and it may not be right it's not going to be right for some people who applied. But what I want to have you see is that God has opened a door that you're walking through, and something good is going on in your life. Keep going that direction. Keep following that direction, because God is shaping you in ways that will make a difference in the future. For us at the Lighthouse, one of the biggest doors that I've seen open as we have advertised this position is that I think that there is an open door for us to walk through about helping people grow into service and ministry in this church, because so many people are having their lives changed by God in ways that I think someday in the future may even lead to callings and vocations that we don't yet see. John Ortberg says, open doors aren't just opportunities. An open door is an opportunity provided by God to act with God and for God. So oftentimes we think the open doors are just there for me. What he says is that open doors, the kind of doors we're going to talk about, are opportunities provided by God to act with God and for God. And so we start this journey together, remembering that it's more about heart formation, say heart formation, than it is our circumstances. If you are standing before an open door right now, I want you to be ready for a ride this fall as we talk about this. This week we're going to look for opportunities to stretch ourselves, because that's how it all begins, and to maybe start walking through some little doors of growth. You may be afraid, because some of you may be before some really big doors. But what we're going to do is we're going to start small, and we're going to try to overcome some of our fears, or we're going to try to get outside of our comfort zone, and we're going to walk through doors that maybe we wouldn't normally walk through. And we're going to maybe even crack some doors that we normally wouldn't. So one of the lessons that I've learned about life from John Ortberg that's been very helpful to me is that if you're going to work on big things, start with small things. Makes sense, huh? I often say, Why run towards something if you can start by walking towards it? That's what we're going to do. And so we're going to start small. And so this week, we're going to go through the week, and we're going to think about some of the daily decisions that we make, and we're going to kind of mix them up a little bit. And we're going to kind of walk through some new doors and trust. And I mean, it can be really small decisions. I remember some years ago, I took this young person from our church who was working with me at my former church. I took him for lunch, and I said, "Where do you want to go?" And he wanted to go to the pita place. I don't even remember what it was named, but it was his favorite place. I'd never been there. So we're going to the pita place, and I said, "Well, tell me about the restaurant." And he says, "Well, I know exactly what I'm going to have." I said, "You know exactly what you're going to have? You must have a favorite there." And he said, "Nope." He said, "I determined that I'm going to go through their menu one at a time, and I know exactly where I am on the list." And I thought, I would never do that. I always order the same thing. That's what we're going to talk about this week, okay? Kind of mixing it up, doing some things, kind of small things that maybe cause you to stretch and maybe walk through a little door that you normally wouldn't. So here's your action plan. I got two things. Number one, what door of growth is there before you? I want you to identify a door of growth right before you today. Maybe it's joining a new group. Maybe it's working on an addiction. Maybe it's a cross addiction. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's starting to deal more intently with a mental illness or your depression. Maybe it's not a career, but you should apply for a job. You know what I mean? Okay, so, what door of growth is before you today? So we're going to all be able to come back next Sunday and identify what that is. Number two, I encourage you to reflect a little bit on your attitude. We learned about that we can choose our attitude and our perspective no matter how doors are open or closed. If you don't know how you're doing on the attitude thing, ask somebody you trust. They'll probably tell you. And so reflect on it, maybe journal on it. So thanks for celebrating Lighthouse's birthday with me. And I hope you have a super day. We're going to stand and sing a closing song.